Salutations, people! Welcome to Page 3 Killers, Murders That Went Unnoticed, a podcast where we dive into the murder cases that went unnoticed by our nation's newspapers.
Hi, Shay.
Hi, John.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Welcome to Page 3 Killers, Murders That Went Unnoticed, episode 17 of season 2.
Yes. And we have Stacey here. She joined us for this episode. So you guys are getting a lot of people joining us recently. So this week we're going back to the Wild West, or the Old West, I should say. It wasn't. Well, it was wild, but not too wild, right?
It was wild enough.
It was wild enough. Yeah. So we're gonna be talking about two cases. They're both pretty small. So we're going to be talking about the murder of Julia Bulette and the death of Ellis Alfred Swearingen. And those are both interesting. So before we get started, though, we are going to do some shout-outs. So thank you to our patrons, Chelsea Hargrett, Stacey Fragale.
Hi.
And Ralunk. Thank you guys for donating on Patreon. We appreciate your support. If you guys out there want to support the podcast, you can always hit us up on Patreon. The link's in the bio. Or you can like, share, and subscribe.
Please do.
Yes. So, I chose the news. Since we have 2 episodes, I have 2 sets of news. I did not break them out as CD side or
Pretty much everything
regular.
that happened in the Wild West was seedy.
Yeah, true. So our first case, the news comes from 1867. So John, do you want to start us off with the news?
Sure. African American men are granted the right to vote in the District of Columbia.
Yep, on January 8th. And then on February 28th, we have, after almost 20 years, 1848, the United States Congress forbids taxpayer funding of diplomatic envoys to the Holy See, Vatican, and breaks off relations with the Vatican. There you go. You want to take it away for March 30th?
Sure. Seward's Folly, the Alaskan purchase. Alaska is purchased for $7.2 million from Alexander II of Russia. And that it's about 2 cents an acre.
Damn.
So what was the folly about that?
Everyone thought it was stupid. And it basically, until they discovered oil there, they thought it was just a waste of money. And turns out there's a bunch of oil, so.
Yeah, so the next one we have is December 18th, the Angola horror, which was Buffalo, New York area train wreck. So the fiery death of 49 people leads John D. Rockefeller to develop and sell his mineral seal 300-degree fire-tested burning oil, and George Westinghouse to invent the railway air brake, which is mandated in the United States in 1893. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not sure if this is the one, but I think it was. They were basically cooked alive inside of the train. By steam.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, it was pretty bad. All right. Well, I do have a couple that are kind of, dark. Yeah. So, we have our June 19th, a firing squad executes Emperor Maximilian of Mexico and 2 of his lieutenants.
Who knew that there was an emperor of Mexico?
Yeah.
A we sure that's real?
It looked real. John, you want to read the next one?
Reverend Thomas Baker of the Wesleyan Methodist Ministry is cooked and eaten by Navastulia tribes people in Nabu
Just say
Tua,
Fiji.
Fiji,
Yeah,
In Fiji.
in Fiji.
together with 8 of his local followers, the last missionary in this country to suffer cannibalism.
Yeah. So, yeah,
That sucks.
that does.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this guy. He
Yeah.
was super confident.
Yeah.
And
Well, wasn't it?
and then they-
it's that like when they had like a connection, like they thought that you were connected to a different tribe. That's what they would do. Is that what that was?
well, they were just fiercely territorial.
And they were fiercely territorial because they had encountered outsiders before, or was that the Amazon? I might have it mixed up. There was like an expedition to the Amazon. I think it was the Amazon.
No, I'm sure it's both.
Yeah, and they had encountered outsiders that looked similar to those people, and they were like, "Nope, we're not even gonna listen to you guys. You're done." Yep. All right. So for our second story is from 1904. So we just have a couple of news stories from that. So we have February 7th. The Great Baltimore Fire in Baltimore, Maryland, destroys over 1,500 buildings in 30 hours. It's crazy. And it was the year of fires. So on April 19th, we have the Great Toronto Fire. Destroys much of that city's downtown. Luckily, though, there was no fatalities. Yep.
This is why sprinklers were invented.
Yeah. And then I have one that it didn't have a date, but it did say it happened in 1904. So pitching against the Philadelphia Athletics, Cy Young of the Boston Americans throws the first perfect game in the modern era of baseball. So I thought you might like that one.
Yeah, one's cool.
Yeah, little neat. Now let's get into our story. So this episode, the two people that I picked for this episode, they have one thing in common. Do you know what that is?
Ooh, can I guess?
Yeah.
Prostitution.
Yeah, they both owned brothels.
Oh.
They both owned and ran brothels.
So one was a madam and then the other one was a pimp.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, they were pretty much the same thing. Although I'm pretty sure Juliet or Julie Boulet, I think pretty much lost everything, but she was super popular in town. Like everybody loved her in town. Like it was crazy. So they believe that she was born in London and moved to the United States, to New Orleans, with her family in the late 1830s. In about around 1852 to 1853, she moved to California, where she lived in various places until her arrival in 1859 in Virginia City, Nevada. Yep. So Virginia City at the time was a mining boom town. Since the Comstock, Silver Strike, that same year. Yeah. Oh, they struck silver. Basically, they found silver in the mountains. So they, became like a big boom town. People started moving there to find their fortunes. Now, as she was the only woman in the area, she was greatly sought after by many of the miners. So they loved her. Now, she quickly took up prostitution. Uh, she was known as Jewel or Julia, as she became known. She was described as having been beautiful, tall, a slim brunette with dark eyes. Now, she was refined in a manner with a humorous, witty personality. Julia Bulette lived and worked out of the small rented cottage near the corner of D and Union Street in Virginia City, in the entertainment district. Yeah, that seems like the perfect place to put your prostitution business, right?
I mean, I guess so.
Entertainment
It is
district.
entertaining.
Yeah. And could you just imagine being the only woman and there's like just 40 to 50 men? Like, they go out, get their silver, and they come back and then they blow it. Like, right there. Hookers and blow, right, babe?
Yeah, hookers and blow.
All right. So, she was an independent operator. She competed with the fancy brothels, street workers, and hurdy-gurdy girls for meager earnings. Now, contemporary newspaper accounts of her gruesome murder captured popular imagination at the time, with few details of her life being left behind. They basically she just went down as like a folk hero, like a folk heroine kind of thing. Now they accredit her with attributes of wealth, beauty, and social standing, but I don't think that she actually possessed any of those things. Now, in reality, she was ill. She was in debt at the time of her death, anyway. She was also good friends with the miners who adored her. One described her as having caressed Mountain, Sun Mountain with a gentle touch of splendor. Aww, so sweet.
Those are fancy words for a minor.
Yeah.
I know.
Saying.
Caressed Sun Mountain with a gentle touch of splendor. Maybe you should say that to me more often.
Standards of beauty were.
Listen, I don't know. Boulet supported the miners in times of trouble and misfortune. She once turned her home, her place, into a hospital after several hundred men became ill from drinking contaminated water. So, yeah. She nursed those men back to health herself, apparently. Once when the local American Indians appeared, an attack seemed imminent, she chose to remain behind with the miners instead of seeking shelter in Carson City. She also raised funds for the Union during the American Civil War. And her greatest triumph occurred when the firefighters made her an honorary member of Virginia City's Engine Number 1. Yep. And on July 4th, 1861, the firemen elected her the Queen of the Independence Day Parade, and she rode the Engine Company Number 1 fire truck through the town wearing a fireman's hat and carrying a brass fire trumpet filled with fresh roses. Firemen marched behind. She donated large sums for new equipment and often personally lent a hand to work the water pumps when they needed it.
And this is why she was broke when she died.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did truck have a different meaning back in the day?
So it was like a wagon
Mm.
with like a tank kind of thing, and it would be filled with water.
So it wasn't a truck at all. It was a wagon.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
But like, okay, it's a fire wagon. But fire wagon just doesn't sound cool. She wrote a fire wagon.
That's
So,
pretty funny.
yeah, so now let's get into her murder.
I just find it funny that this is a prostitute that they have, that they just made her like queen of like, you know, their festival. It's just,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sure that the polite society was not happy about it, but there are only like two of them. Two of them and their wives, and that's it. Everybody else is either somewhere in between there, but yeah. So on the morning of January 20th, 1867, Julia, her partially naked body was found by her maid in her bedroom. Now, she had been strangled and bludgeoned to death. The blunt force trauma was probably inflicted by a heavy piece of wood, which is what they suspect was used. All right. So, Virginia City went into mourning with the mines, mills, and saloons closing down to mark a day of respect. Now, on the day of her funeral, January 21st, I feel like this number is highly exaggerated. They said thousands. I think it's more like a couple hundred. Formed a procession of honor behind her.
people probably just got back in line.
Yeah, they just made the loop and just got back in line. And just kept going. Okay. The
She's
black...
still probably charging them.
No. That was mean.
Sorry.
So yeah, so there were a bunch of mourners that followed her black plumed glass walled hearse. First were the firemen that she supported, who were followed by the Nevada militia, who played the funeral dirge for her service. So Julia was buried in the Flower Hill Cemetery. Now, murders of prostitutes were almost common to say in the 19th century, but the murder of Julia was a little different. This woman had a lot of friends. Some of them were in high places, such as Alfred Doughton, an American journalist, was a longtime friend of hers, and he wrote about his visits with her. Julia was friends with, as I said, the fire company, and some of the upper class women in town as well. She was an accomplished seamstress, made many of her frocks, and they found their place, found a way into the Piper's Opera House at the International Hotel. There in, I believe that is there in Virginia City. Yeah. Now there were reports that insist that Julia was murdered for her jewels and money. The problem being that she had little of each. So, a little over a year later after her death, John Milan, a French drifter, was arrested and charged with her murder. Now, John was 38 years old, and he was arrested when it was discovered he had some of her possessions, including a dress pattern that she had ordered. Now, on April 24th, 1868, he went to the gallows swearing that he was not guilty of killing Julia, but had been only an accomplice in the theft of her belongings. Now, there had been questions over whether John did murder Julia, or over what may have been his motive. Many question if he even understood the courtroom procedures due to his poor grasp of the English language. It said that Mark Twain was a witness at his hanging.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah. So, after all of that, her legend continued long after her death. The Virginia and Tuckahee Railroad honored her memory by naming one of its richly furnished club coaches after her. Her portrait hung in many of the Virginia city saloons, and author Rex Beach immortalized her in as Cherry Malt in his novel The Spoilers. Oscar Lewis, in his book The Silver Kings, reported that Boulet was written about more than any other woman of the Comstock Lode Bonanza. Yeah. Now, only 2 authentic portraits actually exist of her. One is a portrait, it was a photograph which shows her standing beside engine number 1 with her fireman's hat. The third photograph, previously identified as her, was most likely not her. It was probably her maid, who was also named Julia. Now, the television show Bonanza aired an episode called The Julia Bulette Story in Season 1, Episode 6, on October 17th, 1959, in which Julia is portrayed by actress Jean Greer? Jane Greer?
Yeah, Jane Greer.
Yeah. There you go. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get into... this one's in Deadwood. So, Deadwood, South Dakota. I'd move there. Deadwood. All right. Yeah, and this guy was in the TV show Deadwood. Well, not him, obviously. He's dead. But somebody did
character.
portray him. Yeah, in that show. So, he was born Ellis Alfred Swearingen on July 8th, 1845. He was from Oskaloosa? Oh my gosh. Iowa. Oskaloosa?
Oskaloosa.
I was right. All right. Iowa Territory, U.S. I thought I was wrong, and that's why you guys drive me crazy. So Ellis Alfred Swearingen was an American pimp and entertainment entrepreneur who ran the Gem Theater, a notorious brothel in Deadwood, South Dakota, for 22 years during the late 19th century.
Ooh.
Yeah. And he had a twin brother.
Oh my gosh.
The mule. He was the eldest of 8 children of Dutch-American farmer Daniel J. Swerrigan and Kate Montgomery of Oskaloosa, Iowa. So Al remained at home well into his adult years and only arrived in Deadwood in May of 1876 with his wife Nettie Swearingen. Now, Nettie later divorced him on the grounds of spousal abuse. He did marry 2 more times. Both subsequent marriages ended, and they both ended, obviously, in divorce. So now for his time in Deadwood. So Al Swearingen originally owned and operated a canvas and lumber saloon in Deadwood known as the Cricket, which featured gambling and hosting prize fights. Now, shortly afterward, he closed it down and opened a larger saloon, which he named the Gem Theater. Now, the Gem functioned as a saloon, dance hall, and brothel. Now, Al Swerrigan lured desperate young women to Deadwood, then forced them into prostitution through a combination of bullying and physical brutality committed by him and or his henchmen. Yeah. Calamity Jane, who was one of his first dancers at the Gem, procured 10 girls from Sidney, Nebraska, for him on one occasion. Now, the results were highly lucrative. The Gem earned a nightly average of $5,000 and sometimes as much as 10, equivalent of $240,000 in 2019.
That's an ungodly sum of money for a bar in
That
Deadwood,
is.
South Dakota.
Yeah.
Like, that seems high, but that's what they said. Now, the Gem did burn down on September 26th, 1879, along with much of the town, but he rebuilt his establishment larger and more opulent than before. I mean, if you're collecting $5,000 a night, you better do it. Like that's just insane. So he rebuilt it even better, and it was apparently everybody enjoyed it. They quite liked it. So Al Swerrigan's talent for making canny alliances and financial payoffs kept him insulated from the general drive to clean up Deadwood, including the otherwise successful work of Seth Bullock, the town's first sheriff. In 1899, the Gem burned down again, and this time he did not rebuild it. That same year, he left Deadwood and married Odette Odella Tregon. Turgeon? Okay. Yep. It is often reported that Al Swerrigan died penniless while trying to hop a freight train, but research shows that he was actually murdered. According to his rediscovered obituary and newspaper accounts, Al Swerrigan was found dead in the middle of a suburban Denver street on November 15th, 1904. He apparently died of a massive head wound. Less than 2 months earlier, his twin brother, Lemuel, had been shot by an unknown assailant and survived, though suspiciously was not robbed. So it's pretty sure he got murdered. They weren't sure if it was tied to his brother's assault or not. So that was just a bunch of conjecture. Yeah. So, popular culture for this one here. This one was actually pretty popular. So from 2004 to 2006, HBO had its series Deadwood, which depicted him as a powerful and influential figure in the early history of the town. They showed him as a ruthlessly murdering and an abuser. They basically showed like the worst parts of him, I guess. The series altered his life a little bit though, so you can't really go by that. English actor Ian McShane won a Golden Globe award for portraying him in 2005. And was nominated for an Emmy, Screen Actors Guild Award, and a TV Guide named him number 6 in their 2013 list of 60 nastiest villains of all time. Yeah.
Wonder who beat him out. Is that show really that old? Oh my god, that show is that old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that it's been that long since it was on TV. I was just like, what? Yeah. They show the series also did an altered timeline. It showed the gem historically opening in April of 1877. Um, during the famous events of August 1876. Yeah. So they took a little liberty with it, but I wish I could have found more about his actual death. But yeah, he basically died like penniless. Like I feel like if he was like raking in that kind of money, he was just blowing it.
Well, I apparently
Well, he also had 2 divorces.
3 divorces.
Three
Three.
divorces.
I mean, I did a little quick math. He was making $30 million a year
Yeah.
from his bar.
That's
a
if
lot.
those numbers are right.
I'm sorry, that was a
like
revenue. It was
300
there was a revenue of 30 million. 30
Yeah. Yeah, plus then I
Plus
mean,
$1 million.
I guess you're
Closer to
paying
40.
your
Well, he's gotta pay
prostitutes.
prostitutes. He's got to pay, like, you know, for booze and all that.
I think any single establishment bringing in $40 million
Yeah.
a year is not losing money.
He was probably living the high life, and then
He rebuilt that
Yes.
place. How much money? Like, I have no idea how much money he would have blown on rebuilding it the second time.
how much you bet,
Or-
like, the second time it burnt down, he did it and didn't get the insurance money to rebuild it.
Yeah. I don't know. That seems like a thing.
Well, after as it burnt down 20 years after the first time it burnt down, it
Yeah.
had already been running for a while. So you're talking,
Yeah.
he was probably just done with it
Yeah.
30,
Yeah.
35 years after starting it.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been coming to the near end of his life, so he would have been like, ah, fuck this shit. Like, whole town burned down because it's all made of wood. Everybody's homeless.
I mean, it is dead wood.
But, yeah, I think I would like to go to Deadwood. It seems like an interesting place to go. No?
I'd live there.
You don't want to go to Deadwood,
You
Dakota?
live there?
North Dakota or South Dakota?
I don't
South
think-
Dakota.
I don't think you would like it there, but
Well, you're going out west. So tomorrow, it's gonna be fun, right?
yeah, I guess
Not
so.
really.
Are you gonna have
work.
cheese? Where you're
Going to
going?
Wisconsin.
I'm sure there's cheese in Wisconsin that I will try.
Gonna go to the Fleeting Farm.
I don't know what's a Fleeting Farm.
Fleeting Farm. It's like their Home Depot.
Oh, okay.
Don't come home with chickens. I swear. If
You
anything,
can't come home with chickens.
you you don't know him.
How is he gonna pack a chicken in an airplane?
Under his hat.
They catch that.
His pocket. I don't know. But yeah, so those were our 2 interesting. I was trying to find a couple of other ones. I was not able to find anything else that was like halfway decent. But yeah, and oddly enough, these were like really hard to like find stuff on. I did find a couple of articles, a couple of books. But I couldn't find any of the books anywhere. So I only had articles to work off of.
Well, how old were some of the books?
The one, okay, so that was,
Like, one was from 2008. So it's not like... they're
2009.
all within, like, 1999,
yeah,
2000. It's probably, like, you're going to have to order the books on,
yeah,
like, Amazon or something like that. Like, not every, like, store is going to carry... Like, bookstore is going to carry them.
yeah. Like, they were kind of like specialty, I don't know. But yeah, so.
Yeah, this makes me want to find... there was this book that somebody had written. I was watching it on a different podcast or something. They were talking about criminals that made labor laws today, like the labor laws that we have.
Oh man, that would be
It's
interesting.
How criminal lifestyle created them, like our 8-hour workday, having
That
our
would be
weekends off.
interesting.
It was because the people would get drunk, and they're like, "Well, we might as well just give them the weekend off, so we don't have to pay them to come into work because they weren't working anyway."
Oh, that makes sense. Like a whole bunch of just like guys coming in like, oh, like Friday night they got paid.
Pretty sure that's just the renegade history of the United States.
Yeah.
That might be the book.
Yeah,
For.
that's a great book.
Yeah.
It's basically how degenerates shape modern American culture.
Yep. I really want to read that book.
I don't own it because I listened to it on audiobook.
Okay.
Oh, where did you get the audiobook?
Audiobook.
From the
library?
Bucks County
Free library.
Library.
Yeah, you can rent. They now have an audiobook selection. You can download like what, 20 books, 10 books or something.
Yeah, I think you get 20
at a time.
20 audiobooks a month.
Yeah.
For free.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. And yeah.
It's not for you because you don't live here.
Well, I have Montgomery County, so I could go up there and
get one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Thaddeus Russell. That's the author.
Thaddeus Russell.
Yeah.
I like that name, Thaddeus.
That's a good name.
There was a guy that I used to work with down in the city. His name was Thaddeus. He was funny.
So we've only been recording for like 30-some minutes.
I know.
feel like this is gonna be
It was a really short episode.
Yeah. You know what? I will. I'll find something. I'll maybe this week I'll record a little add-in section for you guys and add it on, and you guys will enjoy it and like it. It'll be just me because John won't be here.
And I won't be here.
And Stacey won't be here. But you'll get me, which is the whole point of the show.
Well, why don't you just do a compilation
Yeah.
of images and video of Pandora so that everyone out there can meet Pandora?
Well, except for the people listening. Like,
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you know.
I'll add it for the YouTube. I'll add it for YouTube.
Oh. Sorry, guys, I tried.
All right, guys, we're gonna close this out for tonight, and we will see you back here same time next week.
Yeah, same bad place, same bad topic.
It's same bat time, same bat station.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the Batman.
Batman.
On that note, bye, guys.
Bye.
Hi guys, since our episode was a little light on information this week and it only ran a little over a half hour, I decided to add in some bonus content for you guys. And we're going to talk about the death of Jesse James. I've always found Jesse James to be a particularly interesting figure of the Wild West history. He was one of the big outlaws in the Wild West. And he was famous for being part of / the leader of the James Younger gang. So Jesse James, at this time in 1882, was kind of like in a bad situation. So pretty much all of the James Younger gang had either been arrested or killed, and were in stages of being prosecuted for train robbery, bank robbery, basically, all that stuff that they used to do. And as a gunslinger, obviously, there's quite a few murders that happen in the Wild West. So some of these guys had quite a big total chalked up to their name. And Jesse James was one of the best gunslingers around at this time. Now, in 1882, he was pretty much on his own. He only had 2 remaining members left of the James Younger gang, which was Charlie and new recruit Robert Ford. Now, it was Charlie Wilson Ford and Robert Newton Ford. Now, they had been, Charlie, I should say, had been out on raids with James in the past. And Bob Ford was a pretty new recruit for the team. So, for protection, because Jesse James couldn't trust everybody, he decided to have the Ford brothers move in with him and his family. So Jesse James often stayed with their sister, Martha Bolton, and according to a rumor, he was kind of like into her. You know, he was smitten with her. Now, Bob Ford probably should have been the last person that Jesse James trusted with his life. So Bob Ford had already been conducting secret negotiations with the current Missouri governor, Thomas T. Crittenden, who was really looking to bring in the famous outlaw Jesse James. He wanted that entire gang taken down and brought in. And in fact, it was one of the main talking points of his inaugural address to, people of Missouri. So now the laws prevented the governor from just straight up offering like a bounty on these guys. So what he did was he went to the railroad, who was pretty much one of the main victims of the James Younger gang, and said, hey, if you put up these, put up a bounty for these guys. So what they did was they put up a $5,000 bounty on the delivery of each one of the James Younger gang. And if they were alive and were able to go to trial and get a conviction, you got another $5,000 on top of that, which at this time is an insane amount of money. Like, anybody would turn in their mom for this kind of money. So on April 3rd, 1882, Jesse James is sitting down to breakfast with the Ford brothers in their house. All right. So they finish up, and the Ford brothers know that today is the day. Today's the day that they're going to try to take in Jesse James and collect that bounty. Now, Jesse James and the Ford brothers, they go into the living room, and they were going to be discussing the planned robbery that they were going to be heading out for shortly. Bob Ford later on said that he believed that before they killed Jesse James, that he was probably suspicious of them, and they pretty much thought he knew that they were going to betray him. And said that instead of confronting them, Jesse James walked across the living room and laid his revolvers on a sofa. He then turned around and went over to the dusty mantle and stood on a chair and was like cleaning it, when Robert Ford drew his weapon and shot the unarmed Jesse James in the back of the head. Now, the whole goal for the Ford brothers was to use basically the body of Jesse James to collect that $5,000 reward. It is worth noting that around this time there was pretty much no refrigeration, so a body would decompose fairly quickly without being preserved. So their plan was pretty much, if they couldn't, show the whole body to the governor, they would probably just need the hand, which Jesse James had part of his middle finger missing due to a previous altercation. He also had 2 bullet wounds that would have also served as great identifiers of his body. So that was sort of their goal, to collect that money. Now, the death of Jesse James becomes a national sensation. The Fords make no attempt to hide their role in his murder. Now, Robert Ford wired the governor and to claim that reward. Now, crowds, pressed into the little house in St. Joseph to see the dead Jesse James. And the Ford brothers had to surrender to authorities and were dismayed to be charged with first-degree murder. Now, in the course of a single day, the Ford brothers were indicted and pled guilty and were sentenced to death by hanging. However, they were granted a full pardon by the governor of Missouri. And the governor's quick pardon suggested that he knew that the Ford brothers were planning on killing Jesse James rather than capturing and bringing him in. Now, me personally, I feel that he definitely knew that they were planning on killing Jesse James, because Jesse James probably was not somebody that you would be able to easily take in to police custody without, getting seriously hurt. So the only way that they were going to be able to do this was by killing Jesse James to take him in. So many people were outraged to hear that an elected official responsible for Missouri was conspiring with private citizens to kill another private citizen. So that just added to the notoriety of Jesse James. And what I find so funny is that for all of this, for killing Jesse James, they didn't even receive the full reward. They only received a small portion of the reward, with the bulk of the reward going to the sheriffs that arrested them. James Timberlake and Marshal Henry H. Craig. And they were the two law enforcement officials that were active in that plan. So they were rewarded the majority of the bounty. Now later, the Ford's brothers, they did some touring with, like a circus or not a circus, but like a Wild West show kind of thing, where they would take to the stage and reenact the shooting of Jesse James, which is it's kind of morbid. But that's pretty much what 1800s Victorian people were into. Anything morbid and depraved probably, got everybody excited. I took a class in Victorian literature, and, all of their literature in the 1800s was very Gothic in nature. So anything dark, gritty like that was, pretty much something that they wanted to read about, talk about, and focus on. So they were super into, death and stuff like that, which was kind of weird. But it's something that they faced a lot more every day, especially at a younger age. So for them, it was just a part of life, and it's something that they embraced a little too morbidly. But they did. It's pretty much like us nowadays that are into true crime. It's a little morbid, but, it interests us. And that's what it was for Victorian era people. So these two brothers, they would go and reenact in these shows, and they would reenact the shooting. So public opinion, though, was really divided on the Fords murdering Jesse James. There were some people that thought it was about time that Jesse James got taken down, and they didn't care how it happened. They were happy about it. Others thought that, it was wrong, that, they didn't give him a fighting chance, they weren't happy about it. Now, as for most Wild West gunslingers and, Wild West people, death came for everybody. It didn't just come for the bad ones or the good ones. It came for everybody. And the Ford brothers do not escape unscathed. In 1884, just 2 years after killing Jesse James, the older brother, Charlie Ford, is currently suffering from tuberculosis, which at this time was an incurable disease, and a morphine addiction. Probably he needed the morphine to just deal with the tuberculosis, and it just became too much. So on May 6th, 1884, he commits suicide in Richmond, Missouri. Now, his brother's death is more our speed. It's, page 3 killers. And let's talk about him for a little bit. So, Bob Ford, the one that planned Jesse James' murder, spoke with the governor. He, at this time, I guess, took his portion and basically, started operating a tent saloon in Creede, Colorado. And on June 8th, 1892, Edward O'Kelly arrives in Creede, Colorado with a loaded double-barrel shotgun. He enters Ford's saloon and says, "Hello, Bob," before shooting Ford in the throat, killing him instantly. Now, Edward O'Kelly was part of the James Younger gang, so this was pretty much a revenge killing on behalf of the death of Jesse James. So, Edward O'Kelly is sentenced to a life in prison, but his sentence is commuted because of a 7,000 person signed petition in his favor. In favor of his release, basically. So he had 7,000 people join together and sign a petition asking for clemency or for him to be released. Now, the governor of Colorado does pardon him on October 3rd, 1902. A lot of these Wild West gunslingers ended up getting murdered at some point. They either died of natural causes at a very young age, or were murdered in a revenge-style death, which makes the Wild West what it is. So makes it feel a little bit more wild than it actually was. I mean, a lot of these would have been small podunk towns that didn't have much going on, so, these kind of stories excited a lot of people, and became pretty prevalent in the mythology of the Wild West, So I've always found the Wild West to be an interesting time period for America. And I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you guys want to read up on Jesse James or the James Younger Gang or any of these characters from the Wild West, I recommend you do it. Sometimes you can come across a fun, interesting story that's got a lot of twists and turns. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we will see you back here next week. Bye, guys.